I have the power converter for the computer. I've also got the 4-port USB. No? Okay. Bienvenidos todos. Willkommen alle. Shalom lachol. Um, there, yeah, it said those are, yeah. So tonight is our last night, and we're going to focus on the last part. There's two big stories or two big sections. So we're going to talk, what I'm going to call it, flood and tower. I need to give a little context again because I want to make sure that you catch the flow. And I've got some comments I need to make because there stuff comes up when you're reading, particularly these passages, that make us scratch our heads. And that's okay, but there actually are some really good answers to it. So this I'm going to give you I'm just going to say some things right up front. Is that I I believe that what God is giving us in Genesis, particularly, but also in the entire Bible, is the inside of history. This is what's going on. This is what's really happening. But he gives it to us in a strange way. He gives us an inside picture of who he is and who we are as human beings and what our purpose is and where he's going. But the challenge is that it comes to us in a document and in a culture that's over 3,000 years old. So it comes from a totally different cultural time. And I'm going to use a phrase that I borrow from John Walton. By the way, John Walton is one of the best. He has written all kinds of things about Genesis called The Lost World of Genesis. He has a whole series of books called The Lost World of the Bible. And he walks through all of the topics all the way up through the conquest. And I think he's going to do more. He's written and just recently published a commentary on Daniel. He's already done Genesis. He's one of the best scholars out there. So if you really want to dive in and go deep, I would suggest to read him. A lot of what I'm going to say comes from him. My training is a little bit different because I was trained as a literary critic, not so much as just sort of a text guy looking at Akkadian and all these other ancient languages, but he's really good. So he uses a concept that I really like because it really captures something. He calls, we live in a cultural river. Everybody does. And by that, uh, a river, the Sacramento River is big and it's constantly moving. You and I, as human beings, we live in a particular cultural river. It's different, somewhat different than the cultural river in Germany. There's a lot of overlap. If you've grown up in Taiwan or mainland China, that's a significantly different cultural river. Still a lot of overlap, but cultural rivers consist of a kind of giant narrative, a big story. It's so big you can never tell it. It's like a never-ending story, and in that story, there's four things or four questions that are answered, or answers to four questions. One is what is real, or how and how do you know? Yeah, yeah. What is real? That's been up for debate in Western culture for at least 300 or 400 years now, and different people have some very different answers. But everybody asks that and answers it. And in the ancient world, in general, they understood that there was an unseen realm and there was visible. You could visible, touchable, but they really focused on the unseen realm way more than we do. In the Old Testament that we have, the Hebrew Bible, it's called the heavens and the earth. And they are the two overlapping dimensions of reality. The interesting thing is that, I mean, the problem is our culture is very focused on the physical, on the measurable, on the material. So much so that we actually believe, at least, in general, there's nothing beyond that. It's just all material. It's particles and physical. It's chemistry and physics. Everything is there, goes to that level. That's it. There's really nothing beyond that. In the ancient world, they believed very, very much in the unseen realm, which was called the heavens, and then the earth. Now, this is not unique to the Hebrews. Everybody in the ancient world believed something like that. And actually, if you go to a lot of basic cultures today, if you go to the Amazon or you go to New Guinea or you go to other places, they'll have something like this. They are very dominated by an unseen spiritual world that they're constantly interacting with. And then they do real stuff. They make huts and drink water and kill animals and make food. They do a lot. But in our culture, we basically said that doesn't exist, or the really it is it's a made up world, mostly invented by white men to control everyone else. That's I mean that would be that's kind of a shortened version of what you would get if you went to major universities here. So what I'm getting at, though, is that if you're going to understand what's going on in the Bible, you have to take this very seriously. There's no way around it. And my big argument is that it never went away, and it's really important because most of what you do, you're the connecting point. So the Adam, the human, is the connecting point. He's the image. He brings heaven to earth. He's the image of heaven on earth. So that's you and me. We all do that. It's not just believers. We all do it. We all bring heaven to earth. Every time you make breakfast, you're bringing the idea of breakfast into reality on your plate. That's the way we do it. Everybody does it. Now, there's all kinds of other aspects to this that we're not really aware of. There's kinds of things that we do that actually set up reality. So, one way to look at this would be the way you raise your children. You just think, well, I'm just teaching them how to eat, or what your child learns from you what reality is, which is both wonderful and scary, especially when they become teenagers and they tell you all the mistakes you made. So what is real in the ancient world, particularly the unseen realm, what the Bible calls the heavens, has the dominant role. They're always interchanging, and human beings are the connectors. The angelic beings, or the beings that are part of God's family that are invisible, they can come to earth and do things on earth, but they don't usually stay there. The only real way you can do stuff, well, this is God is free. He's above it. He can do anything he wants. But generally speaking, he chooses to use us to bring heaven to earth. And it's not just something in the New Testament. It's taken to a new level, but that actually happens all the time in the Bible. That's what's going on. So whenever you see David or Abraham, they're bringing heaven to earth. All right. The other question is, what is a good life? Or what is ethics? In the Bible, it's called wisdom. And it focuses on how do you live in Yahweh's heaven and earth in a way that's successful. And most of the Bible is really about that. The Bible is written to help ancient Hebrews, well, to teach them about what's real and how to live in God's world. Now, the challenge for us is that the authority of the Bible is invested in the ancient writer and the ancient audience. The Bible was written for you and me, but it wasn't written to us. So we have to do a certain amount of, algebra is too strong a word. We have to translate not just the language, but also what's going on so that it makes sense in our world. And we have to respect the ancient world. You have to be careful to not try and make it be something that you want. It is its own thing. I didn't make this decision. I didn't decide to pick Hebrew and the Hebrew people. That's God's decision. He decided that he would start with them and he would work through their culture to begin to explain to humans who he is and where he's going. That's his decision. So if I want to respect the Bible, I have to respect the fact that it's written to them. It's not to us, but it's for us, and we have to do a little work. And we actually need the help of the Holy Spirit in order to figure out, well, what does this mean then? Or how do we apply it? Okay. All right. So then the third question is, how do you live the good life? And a huge chunk of the Old Testament deals with these two things, all of the ceremonial laws, all the laws about um, how you set up the temple, so on and so forth. That's all there. And then the fourth one is, who is a really good person? If you notice in the Bible over and over again, certain characters are brought to the format, or brought to the forefront. They are examples. Now, they can be examples of a really good person, or they can also be examples of a really bad person. There are people in between, but that's what you get. You get examples of, so here, this is what a good person looks like, and this is what a bad person looks like. This is where you don't want to go. So you see both of them. All right. So all cultures are doing this. It's a master story, and these are the questions that are being answered all the time. The deal or the trick is that this is done in a very different setting than ours. They don't have chemistry and physics. They're not stupid, but they don't have our science. And it's not fair to make their world fit into ours, or to take our world and say, oh, it's this. There is a certain amount of overlap because I mean, they understood a lot, but I mean, yeah, this was a challenge for me. I went to UC Davis and studied bacteriology. And I would hear this periodically from my teachers, because at that point, a lot of them actually had been Christians at one point, or maybe still were, I don't know. But I had a zoology teacher who, she made fun of the story of Noah and the Ark, like that couldn't be possible. That's just impossible. And she went on and on, and I had no way to explain things to her. So here's the way. I mean, when we're talking about science, science is a moving process. What I learned 50 years ago in the university, about half of it doesn't work anymore because science is always improving itself. It is constantly changing, and amen to that. Medical science has saved my life at least 4 times. I have a little piece of metal in my heart. I have other little patches. I have all kinds of medications. I'm I'm a bionic man in a way. And the stuff that saved me right now wasn't available, was just beginning to be available to my father. So science is always changing. So the deal is this: if God, so let's say, well, God should give scientists. So if God, how's God going to do this? If He's going to pick science at any particular time, it's not going to work, because what was true 50 years ago is like, no, we don't do that anymore. We've got this. I mean, 50, 60-ish years ago, most scientists believed in what's called a steady state universe. And then the Hubble telescope came along, and we realized, oh my goodness, the universe actually had a beginning point. And when all the observations about the universe are now like, no, there was a big bang. It seems to have a start point. And then say, well, it's multiverses or something like that. But God doesn't do it that way. What He does is He speaks to His people at a particular point in history, and He tells them things, but what He says has encoded in it who He is, what it is to be human, and where He's going in life in general. And those things are always true. The problem, again, for a challenge for us, is that He's put it in this ancient language, in an ancient culture. And yeah, so, okay, does that make sense? Any questions or issues with that so far? Sense? Okay, all right. All righty. Let's go ahead. Let's go ahead and just jump right into the text, and I'm going to jump back and forth with different kinds of things. I'm going to go back up into chapter 6. Actually, I'm just going to start reading here in chapter 7. It's always important to approach the scriptures meditatively and with prayer. This is not an algebra problem or a paper on sociology or something. This is the Word of God, and it's very easy to. I'll put it this way: you won't understand the Bible until you stand under it. You have to submit. You have to submit to the authority of God. Okay, so what is this saying? And that's a practice. Okay, so I'm going to read this out loud, and I teach people a method of meditation on scripture that comes out of the Bible itself, comes more or less out of Psalm 1. Um, the scriptures are read out loud, and you listen and you ask the Holy Spirit to highlight for you a word, a phrase, or an image. In a spiritual formation class, we would do this 3 or 4 times and then talk about it in groups and so on. Uh, I want you to use that method, but we're gonna just kind of go a short version here because you didn't come here to hear each other's ideas. You came here to hear mine, probably. So because you can, yeah, okay. I mean, not to be too proud there, but okay. All right. So I encourage you to sit back in your seat, put your feet flat on the floor, close your eyes, and I'm just going to read part of chapter 7. Yahweh said to Noah, "Come into the ark, you and all your household, for I consider you godly among this generation. You must take with you 7 pairs of every kind of clean animal, the male and its mate, 2 of every kind of unclean animal, the male and its mate, and also 7 pairs of every kind of bird in the sky, male and female, to preserve their offspring on the face of the entire earth. For in 7 days I will cause it to rain on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights, and I will wipe from the face of the ground every living thing I have made." And Noah did all that Yahweh commanded him. Noah was 600 years old when the floodwaters engulfed the earth. Noah entered the ark along with his sons, his wife, and his sons' wives because of the floodwaters. Pairs of clean animals, of unclean animals, of birds, of everything that creeps along the ground, male and female, came into the ark to Noah, just as God had commanded him. And after 7 days, the floodwaters engulfed the earth. In the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, on the 17th day of the month, on that day, all the fountains of the great deep burst open, and the floodgates of the heavens were opened. And the rain fell on the earth 40 days and 40 nights. On that very day, Noah entered the ark, accompanied by his sons Shem, Ham, and Japheth, along with his wife and his sons' 3 wives. They entered along with every living creature after its kind, every animal after its kind, every creeping thing that creeps on the earth after its kind, and every bird after its kind, everything with wings. Pairs of all creatures that have the breath of life came into the ark to Noah. Those that entered were male and female, just as God commanded him. Then Yahweh shut him in. The flood engulfed the earth for 40 days as the waters increased. They lifted the ark and raised it above the earth. The waters completely overwhelmed the earth, and the ark floated on the surface of the waters. The waters completely inundated the earth so that even all the high mountains under the entire sky were covered. The waters rose more than 20 feet above the mountains, and all living things that moved on the earth died, including the birds, domestic animals, wild animals, all the creatures that swarm over the earth, and all humankind. Everything on dry land that had breath of life in its nostrils died. So Yahweh destroyed every living thing that was on the surface of the ground, including people, animals, creatures that creep along the ground, and the birds of the sky. They were wiped off the earth. Only Noah and those who were with him in the ark survived. The waters prevailed over the earth for 150 days. But God remembered Noah and all the wild animals and domestic animals that were with him in the ark. God caused a wind to blow over the earth, and the waters receded. The fountains of the deep and the floodgates of heaven were closed, and the rain stopped falling from the sky. The waters kept receding steadily from the earth, so that they had gone down by the end of the 150 days. On the 17th day of the 7th month, the ark came to rest on one of the mountains of Ararat. The waters kept on receding until the 10th month. On the first day of the 10th month, the tops of the mountains became visible. At the end of 40 days, Noah opened the window he had made in the ark and sent out a raven. It kept flying back and forth until the waters had dried up on the earth. Then Noah sent out a dove to see if the waters had receded from the surface of the ground. The dove could not find a resting place for its feet because water still covered the surface of the entire earth, and so it returned to Noah in the ark. He stretched out his hand, took the dove, and brought it back into the ark. He waited 7 more days and then sent the dove out again from the ark. When the dove returned to him in the evening, there was a freshly plucked olive leaf in its beak. Noah knew that the waters had receded from the earth. He waited another 7 days and sent the dove out again, but it did not return to him this time. In Noah's 601st year, on the first day of the first month, the waters had dried up from the earth, and Noah removed the covering from the ark and saw that the surface of the ground was dry. And by the 27th day of the second month, the earth was dry. Then God spoke to Noah and said, "Come out of the ark, you, your wife, your sons' wives with you. Bring out with you all the living creatures that are with you. Bring out every living thing, including the birds, animals, and every creeping thing that creeps on the earth. Let them increase and be fruitful and multiply on the earth." Noah went out among his sons, along with his sons, his wife, and his son's wife. Every living creature, every creeping thing, every bird, and everything that moves on the earth went out of the ark in their groups. Noah built an altar to the Lord. He then took some of every kind of clean animal and clean bird and offered burnt offerings on the altar. And Yahweh smelled the soothing aroma and said to himself, "I will never again curse the ground because of humankind, even though the inclination of their minds is evil from childhood on. I will never again destroy everything that lives as I've just done. While the earth continues to exist, planting time and harvest, cold and heat, summer and winter, day and night will not cease." Okay, I could go on, but I think you'd go to sleep. So I'm going to go back here. All right. So I'm going to show you a video. I asked some of you to take a look at the Epic of Gilgamesh. Anybody have time to do that? Look up the Epic of Gilgamesh? Okay. Um, I'm going to show you a short video. The cool thing is that in the last 10 years, people have made little animation videos of all kinds of stuff, and it makes complex ideas pretty, it compresses them. Um, Put it this way, if you want to understand the meaning of the story, you have to understand the place of the flood. Um, in about the middle of the 19th century, there was a scholar in England in the British, I think it's the British National Imperial Museum, and he had a clay tablet there, and he was able to decipher it. And what he discovered is the first time was a flood story that's outside the Bible. And then in the last 100 years, particularly in the last 40 to 50 years, we've discovered parallel tales to the flood, quite different in some ways, but the basics of the story are there. So the flood is not unique to the Old Testament. So some people have said, oh, those Hebrews, they just copied everybody else. No, it's something they all had in common. Um, it is So the question is, how have they used it and how's it different? So I need you to actually, so it's a short video, it's about 3 minutes, but it's gonna walk you through one of the stories. It's done in cartoons. And then what we're gonna do is we're gonna compare and contrast. That's one way that will help you understand what's going on here. And then I'm gonna point things out as we go along. So this goes right here. Yes, come on. Yeah, this happened to me this morning. Oh, come on. Where's the, okay, turn. Come on. It's a recording. Okay, it should be. Janice, you want to help me? I mean, it worked at home, and now all of a sudden I can't figure out how to get it to play.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe I need, there we go. Yes?
Mhm. It's seem-
Okay, then
it
let's,
seems to record it for quite a bit, actually.
okay, then what I'm going to do,
So
yeah,
it's playing the recording.
okay, I'm going to close. Oh, you know what? I wonder if it has the digital rights management.
No,
That wouldn't be right. No, that wouldn't
it's
be it.
not.
Let's just try it again. Okay,
So
sorry.
it's just taking a while to load. But yeah, it's playing.
You got it.
Okay, here we go. How do we turn the volume up? Okay. I'm going to scroll it back. I really want you to get this. Okay. There we go.
A long time ago, when they were just the gods, Anu ruled the sky, Enki ruled the sea, and Enlil ruled the earth. The greater gods burdened the lesser gods with laborious tasks. They were forced to do heavy, burdensome labor. The lesser gods were forced to dig the Tigris River and the Euphrates. They were ordered to heap up the mountains. Fed up with their work, the lesser gods set fire to their tools and demanded to see their foreman Enlil. At night, they surrounded Enlil's tomb. The mob was halted by the gatekeeper, who asked who declared war, who was brought battle when Enlil. The lower gods explained the pains of their burdensome labor. They sought reckoning with Enlil. The greater gods discussed the matter, and a solution was proposed. The mother goddess would create humans in order to carry the burden of labor, freeing the lesser gods from their pain. The gods agreed, and Enki made a plan. But in order to make humans, one of the gods must be sacrificed. Enlil offered himself. His blood was mixed with clay. And after spitting on the clay, the job was done. The mother goddess formed humans out of the clay. And now, the humans would be burdened with the labor of the gods. At first, the gods enjoyed their new leisure, but as time passed and the population increased, the humans grew large in number and became too noisy, greatly disturbing the gods. The racket disturbed Enlil so that he could not sleep. So to stop the noise, he sent a drought to decimate the human population. And it didn't work. The humans repopulated and their commotion continued. Frustrated by the continuing noise, Enlil sent a famine to kill the humans. And it didn't work. The humans repopulated and their commotion continued. Finally, Enlil had enough, and he prepared to send a great flood to destroy the humans. Now, among the humans, Atrahasis was the wisest and most heroic. Enki went behind Enlil's back and appeared to Atrahasis in a vision, warning him of the incoming peril. He told him about the flood and ordered him to build a boat that would save his life. Atrahasis, together with the elders, gathered materials and began construction for greatness. He would take his family with him, as well as many animals. Once on board, he sealed the door shut. But Atrahasis was saddened because of the impending destruction. Meanwhile, above the skies, Adad the storm god brought forth the mighty flood, and the deluge came down. It was such a great catastrophe that even the gods themselves were terrified. The deluge lasted 7 days and 7 nights. When the storm finally subsided, the humans had all been wiped out, but the gods became hungry. There were no humans to offer them sacrifices, their farmers all wiped out. Their dismay turned to joy when they discovered Atrahasis had survived and he had offered sacrifices to the gods. Smelling the delicious food, they came down to feast. However, Enlil became furious at Enki for revealing his plan, but Enki shrewdly calmed him down, explaining to Enlil that he was preserving life. The two made a pact to stop the humans becoming too noisy again. They agreed to limit their number. They introduced death for all humans. They introduced infant mortality and made a third of women infertile. They also created priests and priestesses who would be celibate their whole lives. As for Atrahasis, no one knows. The story ends there, but some believe that he was carried away to paradise to live away from the new humans. And thus ends the epic of Atrahasis.
Thanks for watching. Now,
Okay.
story sounds so much.
All right. So versions of that story are found throughout the ancient Near East. Okay, I'm just curious. Responses. What do you think about that? Okay. All right.
The idea that you have to limit how many humans can be there is vibrant today among certain people.
Okay. All right. That is Sumerian. So it's written in a language called Akkadian. And actually, what we're going to find out is that there's at least three Akkadian words that show up in the Hebrew version of this. It was so widely known that everybody, that's what they understood. So what I want to do is I want to go back through the story the story in the scripture and and show not only the differences, I'll put it this way. What God has done is he tells the story right, or he says, this is the way it really is. And so you get these other versions. But these other stories help us to understand what's going on. All right? Because if you see the contrast, then you can you can see stuff. So let's start right out here. First of all, so Yahweh, by the way, anytime you see this in your Bible, it's actually this. Yahweh. That is God's personal name. That's the one he reveals to Moses. There's actually a whole, that would be fun to do sometime, is just go through because you get Yahweh revealing his name to Moses and then describing, because there's a little more to it than that. Essentially, it means something like the one who causes to be. And that's what Yahweh does. He causes things to be. He causes existence to exist, maybe one day. So anyway, that's in your, so when you see that, you can put in Yahweh. All right, so said to Noah. Now, the interesting thing is that in these early stories, I think I mentioned this the other night, Noah is probably not his real name. Noah is a description of what he does, because Noah means comfort. And Noah brings comfort. Adam is from it basically, it's to get the pun. So Adam comes from what's called the Adamah. So to get that right, you'd probably call him dusty. That'd be one way to do it. But he's human. So human, and then his wife, Hava, her name is life. So you have human and life. So those are not their real names. They had real names, but their names are placekeepers. Okay? So Noah is not his name, but it describes what he does. He brings peace to a very turbulent situation. So in this case, his name is played out. All right, come into the ark, you and all your household. We're only one verse in. Okay. So the word for ark, let me see if you can get this. I'll bet you can. Where does that word ark show up? Where else does it show up?
Like the box of the covenant.
Box of the covenant. This is really important. The one that's closest to this. What does Moses put in?
Ten Commandments. Oh.
He's put in a teva. He's put in the ark. You have a baby. So so Noah goes into the ark, and Moses is put into a miniature ark. Noah sails on these primordial waters, and Moses sails on the Nile River, which is considered a god. Do you see the parallelism? So this is one way that these ancient stories are told. They're told as connecting points to other stories. So all 11 chapters in Genesis are full of these. So basically, what you have in these first 11 chapters of Genesis is patterns. You have a person who's put through some kind of an experience, and they do something to bring about a change, and they introduce a basic pattern. For instance, you have the Garden of Eden, where so human and life, they actually don't have names yet, but it's human. It's the two humans. They're together. They decide that they're going to disobey Yahweh and go with what the snake's saying. So the pattern is this: you have the man being there, but his wife persuades him to go in another direction. The pattern of the woman persuading the man to do something he's not supposed to do, does that ever show up in the Old Testament? Where? Well, it shows up in spades. It shows up in the big time in somebody that we think is very wise. Solomon. Solomon's wives led him astray, and really astray, because women are the ones who bring the religion. They bring the faith. They're the keepers of the faith. So they're the ones that have a kind of special contact with the spiritual world, and the man just kind of goes along with it. But what you get here is that that's not the way it's supposed to work. They're supposed to be partners. But immediately you've got this Well, I'm gonna do what my wife says. So it isn't wrong to listen to your wife. It's not always right to obey her. So what you get there is a pattern, and then it gets amplified when you have the consequences. Because of this, I will put enmity between you and the woman, between her offspring and your offspring. Your offspring will snap. Her offspring will try to hit you on the head, and you'll try to bite her in the heel. That's a pattern, because what you see, the idea is this: every time you see a conflict from now on, that is probably the offspring of the serpent going after the offspring of Eve. It's a pattern that explains what's going on. And all of them chapters in Genesis are doing that. They're setting up patterns that get played out over and over again. So you have Noah in the ark with his family, and then you have Moses in the ark in the River Nile. And then and it shows up again in is it First or Second Peter, where it talks about the people survived in a boat. It becomes an image of baptism. I mean, it's just, I mean, that's the way the Bible thinks. I mean, that's not the way I think automatically, but it's like, okay, I get it. So anyway, that's okay. So come into the ark. So an ancient listener would hear the word ark, and for them, they'd go ark, 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 and they would think of all the times the ark shows up. And then there's the Ark of the Covenant. Okay, but so it's a small thing that carries salvation in it. That'd be one way to look at it. Usually, that salvation is a person. So you have, because here's a pattern: God does something to one person, puts them through an experience, takes them out the other side, and then they are able to do something for all the other people. That happens over and over again. That's called the pattern of the test, because sometimes it's something very difficult. That's Abraham. Abraham is the first one to ever trust God. It's not to know God, but to actually put what the Bible understands as faith beyond, well, he was going to lose everything, and he actually trusts Yahweh. Abraham brings trust into the world. And now people can trust God because Abraham has done it once. Although I'm not saying Abraham does it perfectly from then on, but he accomplishes something. So that's the way the Old Testament works. This is not a disinterested history of a particular tribe in the ancient Near East and their God. That's not what it is. It is an instruction manual of how to be wise and how to live in Yahweh's world. Okay? You guys are so quiet right now. Okay, so we're just a few words in here. Okay, you and all your household, for I consider you godly among this generation. Technically speaking, the word there for godly actually is righteous. And righteous means that you're living an exemplary life. You're living a good life. So Noah is an image of a good man in a very dark world. How often have the Jews been in a situation like that? Oh, like most of their history. Okay, so I mean, this is what God does in the Old Testament. It's these linkages. They're called today the term we would probably use is hyperlink. Do you know what a hyperlink is? You ever seen a hyperlink? It's in blue type, and and you click on it and it takes you somewhere else. So what you have in the Old Testament is all of these literary hyperlinks, and they're deliberate. They're not accidents, because you're supposed to see the kind of comprehensiveness of what God is doing and to see the linkages, because the pattern's being played out again. Okay, so you are righteous among this generation. You must take with you 7 pairs of every kind of clean animal and the male and its mate, 2 kind of every unclean animal, male and mate, and also 7 pairs of every kind of bird in the sky, male and female, to preserve their offspring on the face of the entire earth. So go look at Exodus 35 through 37 when you have a chance. Don't do it right now, because what you get here is that Noah is actually acting out what you do to prepare the tabernacle. So there's a connection between what he's doing to prepare the ark and what you do to prepare the tabernacle, because the tabernacle is an ark, but it's the ark where God is, because only Moses could go in there. If you go in there under the wrong circumstances, you're dead, just like flying into the sun. There's going to be a point where you're going to incinerate. Okay, All right. Okay. For in 7 days I will cause it to rain on the earth for 40 days and 40 nights, and I wipe out from the face of the ground. Okay. We know. Okay. So let's go back. What was the reason? So you had Enki and Enlil. You had the gods. What's the problem? Why is there a flood for the Akkadians in Atrahasis? Why did the gods come up with a flood? What are they trying to do?
Humans were too loud.
Yeah. So it's basically sound suppression. We're going to get rid of all that noise. Now, some people have said it isn't just they were loud. It's not like they had rock concerts. Actually, the noise means that they were rioting and they were rebelling against the gods. That's probably closer to the idea. You can read into this. Well, there's all kinds of stuff you can read into it. But anyway, so why is Yahweh sending the flood? So on one hand, so you have these other stories, and all of them basically say the same thing, that the gods want to kill off the humans because they're a problem. We wanted them to feed us, and we're going to go with that in a minute here. We wanted them to feed us, and actually they're just making so much noise we can't sleep at night. Well, they're rebelling. Okay, why does Yahweh send the flood? What's the reason?
Flesh had corrupted their way.
Yeah.
But I heard it wasn't just normal sinning like lying and killing here and there, but probably because of the intermingling with the fallen angels that we talked about last week. I heard somebody say that Noah was probably the only pure human that was in the family.
Well, he's definitely the only one who's righteous. And so this is a description. So Noah's a real person. I would accept the idea that Noah is not his real name, but he's a real person. There's a person that did this. And backing up a little bit, there was a flood. The question is which one? And we'll come back to that in a minute. There's so much in my head. It's like, what do I say now? Okay, so the Enlil and Enki want to kill off the humans because they're making too much noise. It's a sound suppression project. Yahweh is going to cleanse the earth because the entire earth itself is corrupt. His project of Genesis and what he wants to do with the entire cosmos has been torn apart and it's actually, well, probably the best word would be polluted and destroyed by a combination of human and angelic disobedience. And it's a combo. I didn't bring this up last week, but one of the things, if you go back and look at back up at chapter 6 here. So when humankind began to multiply on the face of the earth, that actually was going on early. So if you go backwards a little bit, that's already starting to happen. So it sounds like, oh, this is a little thing at the end, but the sons of God saw that the daughters of humankind were beautiful. So the intermingling of these, it's a crossing of barriers. Humans and these angels are not supposed to come together, and what they produce are monsters. By the way, anybody watching the House of David? You see Goliath. They really play it. They go with this. Goliath is one of them. Okay, that's fascinating because that's the first time I've ever seen that. So this is actually going on. It isn't something happens at the end. It happens for a long period of time. It's actually ongoing. So you have human disobedience accelerated by divine disobedience. The Mesopotamians and the other civilizations are going, oh no, those gods, they taught us how to do all the cool stuff. And Yahweh says, no, they basically polluted you. They accelerated your evil. They are not your friends. They're nasty. And they're trying to carry out their own project of creating humans in their own image. And the image comes out as a kind of a weird monster. Okay. All right. Let's go back here. Okay. Okay, for in 7 days I will cause it to rain on the earth, and for 40 days and 40 nights. How long was the flood story in Atrahasis? 7 days. Okay. Why 40? What's the significance of 40? Generally speaking, in Hebrew, it means a really long time. So it means 40 and it means a long time. It's one of those numbers that shows up again and again. There is a whole discipline called gematria that deals with the way numbers work in the Old Testament. I've never explored it. People do, and people do all kinds of stuff. Because actually in Hebrew, the letters, so Aleph is 1, Beit is 2. So the letters themselves can be used as numbers. And so people do all kinds of fancy stuff. I don't really buy it, but there are people out there doing this, that they take the stories or the words in Hebrew and then they turn them into numbers and they see patterns. I'm sorry, I think you're making up something, but at any rate, the numbers are symbolic. So it was 40, but it also means a really long time. And Noah did all that the Lord commanded him. Why do you need to know that?
He's righteous.
He's righteous. There you have it. Okay. So you have an example of how, okay, part of it is this. Over and over again, the Jews were in a culture that hated them. And yet they had to remain faithful to Yahweh. And that's what Noah does. And God does amazing things through him. Okay? Because we look at it and we think, oh, it's just an ancient story. No, it's an example of how to be a really good person. Noah's it. This is how you do it. Okay? All right. Noah was 600 years old when the floodwaters engulfed the earth. Noah entered the ark along with his sons, his wife, his sons' wives, because of the floodwaters. Pairs of clean animals, of unclean animals, of birds, and everything that creeps along the ground, male and female, came into the ark to Noah, just as God had commanded him. And after 7 days, the floodwaters engulfed the earth. Okay, there's just some we can't talk about it. I'm just going to go on because there's other stuff I want to talk about here. So we've talked about this before. The age, so the way the ancient world looks at age is actually the way a lot of basic cultures look at age today. When we think of age, we think, oh, that's how many times you went around the sun. But in other cultures, age is honorific. It's a way of describing your righteousness or your glory. Okay. That's one of my ways of understanding it. Okay. On the 600 year, okay, on that day, the fountains of the great deep burst open and the floodgates of the heaven were open. Okay. What is that all about? Thought you'd never ask. All right. This is called cosmic geography. When we talked about Genesis 1 through 2, we said that God separated the waters above from the waters below, and in between he puts the rakia, which then actually becomes the heavens. So the rakia is actually from the surface of the earth all the way up. It's not just, it's the sky, definitely, but it's everything in between. So what happens is this. There's water up here, and there's water down here. But water is never just water. Because there's an actual special word for this. It's called tehom. And it means the deep. It means the abyss, Abgrund. Water is never just H2O. It is liquid chaos. So when an ancient person would look at the ocean, they would not just see, oh, there's some seawater out there. They would see, yes, there's water out there, but that's chaos. Even today, if you're in the wrong place in the ocean, you're going to die very rapidly. The ocean is very hostile to human life. Only under very special circumstances can you survive in it. In the ancient world, water, oops, I got kicked off. Okay. All right.
So those people didn't know how to swim?
Some did. Yeah, actually, interesting you should ask, because there's a wall carving that Ashurbanipal made to celebrate the destruction of the Jewish city Lachish, and he shows guys swimming with goat skins. They made them like floaties, and they swam, and they were the engineers. They swam, they swam to be able to attack the city. So so at least soldiers could do it to some degree. Yeah, the whole history of swimming, that's a whole thing. But what I'm getting at is that water is chaos. It's both things at once. When we think of water, we just think, oh, it's cold, it's H2O, it might be salty. Is it clean enough for me to drink? Their thinking is, especially if you're talking about large bodies of water, is that they're chaotic. And the earth starts out in unorder, and then God orders it. He orders it by separating it and making a place in the middle where it's safe for humans. So what's happening now in the whole rest of the story is God is reversing creation. It's going backwards. So you have the description of windows up here. When you open the windows or the floodgates, the word is actually window. It's used in other places for a window in a wall, but it's a window in the sky. And what happens is the water comes down from here, and then the springs of the deep. So think of wells. The well comes up from below. And so what you have is the primordial waters of Tehom, the chaos waters, come back in. And everything's wiped out. So you go back to the original state. God has pushed the reset button. He started over again. Now, that actually shows up in the book of Revelation, but in a different way. It shows up, it's in Isaiah 65. I'm creating a new heaven and a new earth. There's no water involved, but the idea of bringing about a new heaven and a new earth, it's already there. It's here in Genesis, and it shows up in Isaiah, and then it's really central in the book of Revelation, that God is building a whole new cosmos. And the interesting thing is that Jesus is the first bit of that. He's the first bit of new creation, but we're not talking New Testament today, so.
Okay, so we
Yeah.
have taking place at creation and at the Noah's flood. And then when God makes a covenant with Noah, he says that not again will he flood the earth.
Mhm.
He sets a rainbow in the sky
Mhm.
as a reminder
Yeah.
to him.
Yeah.
Anything on that?
And I mean, so everybody shares this basic story, but the Hebrews are convinced that okay, we have to go back here. Trying to think of how the best way to do this. So this is their cosmic geography, and basically what you get in the flood is a reset of creation. It's starting over again. And we'll see that actually goes on. What you saw in the video is, what is the job of the humans? What are they supposed to do? Do you remember? They feed the gods. So essentially, the human's job is to be the slaves of the gods. And what you get is a kind of, it's called the Great Symbiosis. So the gods plus humans, they're in the same system. And the human's job is to feed the gods. You raise crops and animals, and you actually, I don't want to get ahead of myself here because that actually comes up in chapter 11. But the job of human beings is to take care of the gods, and you're really slaves. You're made from a god's blood and mud. In Genesis, God says he takes dust and forms it, and then he does this really intimate thing. He breathes into it. That's not in that story. I'm just trying to pull out some of the differences here. So human beings in Genesis are actually created to be God's partners. It's a very different, it's a partner. I mean, a slave could be a partner, but if you're a slave, you're usually not a partner. Yeah.
The other God that we saw, are they Elohims as well?
That would be a generic title they had, yeah. In the ancient world, we hear the word God, we go, oh, there's only one. In the ancient world, the word Elohim means an invisible, powerful person, or having a person has some kind of power. Samuel himself is referred to by the witch of Endor as an Elohim, a god, but she doesn't mean he's Yahweh. He's an invisible personal power. So they were considered that. But the thing is, they're basically more like slave masters, and you can't do anything without them. You have to get the gods on your side because they control the fertility of your family, the fertility of your crops, and the fertility of your animals. If you can't get them to help you, you're dead. So you're a slave, but you need these people. It's the weirdest. I mean, you can think of a really strange family dynamic, and that's what it was. They're all in the same family. There's no, they're just higher up on the scale. In Genesis, what you get, Yahweh is absolutely unique. He's not one of them. He makes them. So it's a totally different picture. I'm not sure what you're saying.
They weren't killed in the flood.
The angelic beings that are in rebellion to God. That's right. Yeah. That's why one reason why Jesus has to come, because he defeats them, at least pulls their power away. They still have some kind of influence in the world we're in. Yeah.
So the offsprings of the angels marrying the human ladies, were they considered gods?
No. They are, that's Gilgamesh was 2/3 divine and 1/3 human. Hercules would be a Greek example of half human, half god. They're half breeds and they're weird.
They're not.
They are Nephilim. Yeah. Yeah. The Nephilim, they have different names, Nephilim, Anakim, depending on where you're talking about them, but they are, and then they have their own offspring, apparently. So.
Story that these Nephilims were enslaving the humans to provide for them, to feed them, and the humans could not provide enough, and they were being harassed or abused because they were not good enough slaves. Right?
Yeah, if you get into first and second Enoch, you get all kinds of interesting stuff going on. Yeah, that's another whole thing. But the idea, the people in what's called the Second Temple Judaism, Enoch, and there's a lot of there are other stories that are similar to this. They help us understand what these beings are like. But that takes us in a whole other direction. So we could do that sometime. Okay, so Noah entered the ark accompanied by his son Shem, so on. Every living creature after its kind, every living animal after its kind, pairs of creatures, male and female. So you have that pattern. The breath of life came into the ark to Noah, into the male. Okay, then. Just as God commanded him, again, he's doing exactly what he's supposed to do. Then Yahweh shuts him in because he couldn't shut the door from the outside. Let's see, oh gosh, we totally skipped over the construction of the ark. No. Did I pass it over? I wanted. Oh, okay. All right. Okay. So God said to Noah, I've decided that all living creatures must die, for the earth is filled with violence because of them. Now I'm about to destroy them and the earth. Make for yourself an ark of cypress wood. Okay. Make rooms in the ark and cover it with pitch inside and out. Okay. This word, let's see, where is it? Okay, the word cypress wood. You may have heard this. Gopher. Now, a gopher in English is like the guy that goes for stuff. He's my gopher, but that's sorry. Yeah, that's a bad pun. Okay, that's a dad joke. This word only shows up once in Hebrew, and it's not actually a Hebrew word. It's an Akkadian word, and it's Basically, it would be gafar. We're not sure what it means exactly, but the closest thing in Akkadian means reed. And that matches up with the other stories. So the boat that Moses makes is made of reeds.
No.
I'm sorry, this craft that he makes is made of reeds, which matches the other stories pretty well. Because we don't know what in a lot they've translated it cypress wood, but that's not what it is. The closest we can figure out is it's an Akkadian, it's a word borrowed from Akkadian. And again, because that's what everybody understood. If it wasn't there, the average Hebrew listener would go, no, that's not right, because we know that's called gufer. But it basically means reeds. And then it says here, make for yourselves rooms in the ark. That's also a reference to reeds. It's not it doesn't mean rooms. Actually, in Akkadian, it's another word for reeds. And it's covered with pitch. Now, it's actually bitumen. Do you know what pitch is? That's from trees. Bitumen is a petroleum product. And that's the way they made boats. They would take reeds and put them into bundles. And then the bundles they would make into or a coracle, or sometimes something that's more straightforward. And then they would coat it with this bitumen to seal it. So, well, the gafar, that you have two different words for reeds, two different kinds of reeds. Yeah, did you want to? There you go. Interesting connection. I hadn't thought about that. Yeah. That's the kind of thing that Hebrew storytelling loves to tell, is to tease you so that you make the connections. Because this is not just, this is not like a modern historian, sort of a dispassionate description of what happened and what was going on. It's showing you patterns that you're supposed to look for. You use these patterns because you live in a culture that is foreign to you and trying to kill you often. And that actually was the experience of the early church. They also were very much, and we're kind of going back to that now, where the church is going to be, is becoming, in some sense, a kind of a minority, depending on where you are in the world. Okay, so an ark, make the rooms in the ark and cover it with pitch inside and out. This is how you should make it. The ark will be 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, and 40 feet high. So this is enormous. This is bigger than any of the dimensions of the other arcs that are mentioned in these other stories. It's huge. Make a roof for the ark and finish it, leaving 18 inches from the top. So interestingly enough, what you get is something like a rakia. He's made a cover over the top. I mean, again, that's kind of a wordplay, okay? I'm about to bring floodwaters on the earth to destroy it from under the sky, all the living creatures that have the breath of life in them. This word floodwaters is special. It's called a mabul. And it doesn't mean any flood. It means the flood. This thing that actually just totally destroyed everything. All right? It's a special word in Hebrew. Let's see. Okay. Let's see. Everything else on the earth will die, but I will confirm my covenant with you. You will enter the ark, you and your sons and your wife. Okay. So there we've already read through that. Sorry, I jumped over that. Okay. So I don't want to spend too much more time here. Okay. So what you get in Genesis is a much more detailed account, and Yahweh's involved in the process. So Yahweh is resetting his creation, but he's got a righteous person and he's helping him. He's putting him through something because he's going to be the means by which he's going to bring creation to a holy place. Okay? So it's not just an end, it's a new beginning. And the flood engulfed the earth for 40 days. As the waters increased, they lifted the ark and raised it above the earth. The waters completely overwhelmed the earth, and the ark floated on the surface of the water. So you go from earth with water above below to all the earth is covered with water. So it's gone back to tohu vabohu. It's gone back to this desolate thing. It's the reset. Okay. The waters rose more than 20 feet above the mountains. Okay. Now, how tall is Mount Everest? I'm going this way because you're going to run into this at some point if you haven't already. How tall is Mount Everest? How many thousand feet is it? about 29,000 feet. So if I take this, if I understand this as a person in the 21st century, I'm thinking, so there's enough water that it's 20 feet above Mount Everest. Where would that water come from? And then where would it go? Okay, I don't know. I'll put it this way. Um, there's all kinds of things that I can't explain, but here's an attempt. So is the flood universal? Okay. Okay. Because the alternative, is it local? So if you were in, let's see, where did we have a flood? We had a flood recently in Tennessee, and some guy built walls around his house, and he preserved his pool, his house, and everything because he built the levees up. So floods are still a thing today. If you were this guy and you're standing on your house, even the rooftop of your house, would it look like all Tennessee is covered in water? It would. So, I mean, one way to understand this is that so you're in somewhere in the ancient Near East, depending on where you are, there's hills and there are mountains, you have Mount Carmel, so on. But if you're in Mesopotamia, it's flat as far as the eye can see. So there's a mound that might, there's something that's got some height to it. But when you look around, all you see is water. So it makes sense from their perspective that they were overwhelmed. The flood shows up universally in all of the ancient Near Eastern cultures. And actually it shows up in a lot of other places too. So when did this happen? The best candidate, I will probably not get the dates right. I want to say it's 5500 BC. And do you know where the Black Sea is? Okay, we all know now because we've all been learning a lot about the most recent political crisis becomes a lesson in geography for Americans. Who go, I never heard about that before. I'm included in that. So you have what happened it's 5500 or 5900. I can't remember now. But so you have basically you have the Black Sea and you have the Bosporus here. So this is Turkey, and then you have Europe and so on. This was fresh. That was fresh water at one time. There's some kind of an earthquake, something happened. Whatever happened is the water broke out and it all came rushing into the Mediterranean at once. So there are lots of candidates for this flood, but this would make sense. So everybody has in their cultural memory, there was a giant flood and it wiped us out. So the question is not what happened. The question is, what does it mean? And so you have a lot of these people saying, oh, it was the gods trying to get us. They're out to get us. And Yahweh says, no, I was restarting creation. So he's restarting this place where he has started something special. Because remember, we've talked about Genesis 1, you have a bunch of humans, and then Genesis 2, you have some of them taken out. And this is, again, the pattern. God takes a few and does something with them to send them back in. So, I mean, that's one way of putting it together. It's a local flood. And it actually so there was a real flood, and it was so devastating that people never forgot it. Well, it was local in the sense that depending on where you are in the ancient world, you experienced it.
If it topped Mount Everest by 20 feet,
yeah,
I would say it's local.
Yeah. Well, that's again, this is where I didn't choose this story. This is, Yahweh chose to describe things this way. So he's taking this event that everybody knew and he's saying, this is what's really going on. This is me resetting creation, starting something over again. Our scientific mind is, well, where would that water come from and where would it go? And then you just get into impossible situations there. So that I can't answer that question, but what we can see is what God's saying about himself. I'm restarting things. And the chaos so I allowed that to come back in because in the other civilizations, they were constantly in fear that the gods would do it again. And Yahweh is saying, no, I'm making a covenant. And a covenant is a solemn agreement from a more powerful party to a less powerful party. I will never do it that way again. So you get a very different God and you get a picture of God. And it's in their language and in their cultural stream. But that's what God gave us. I can't solve all of the scientific problems, but the message it has about God is very clear. Okay. All right. Okay, so let's go. All right, so God remembered Noah and all the wild animals and domestic animals that were with him in the ark. God caused a wind to blow over the earth and the waters receded. In Genesis 1, you have the spirit of the wind of God blowing over the earth. Here you have it again. See the repetitions there. The fountains of the deep and floodgates of heaven were closed. The rain stopped falling from the sky. The waters kept receding steadily from the earth. They were gone by the end of the 150 days. On the seventh day of the seventh month, or 17th day of the seventh month, there's got to be something going on with the numbers there. I just don't know enough to be able to do that. The ark came to rest on one of the mountains of Ararat. It doesn't say a mountain of Ararat. It's in the mountains of Ararat. So it's far away for a Jew. That's far away. It's in the mountains. Mountains are considered to be sacred spaces where kind of spooky things happen. Mountain climbing was not something that people did in the ancient world. They didn't have the equipment, they didn't have the time, and it was very dangerous. And there's bad things in those mountains because that's where the gods live. Don't go there. So anyway, it comes down. Waters kept on receding to the 10th month. At the end of 40 days, Noah opened the window he'd made in the ark and sent out a raven. It kept flying back and forth until the waters had dried up upon the earth. The raven doesn't come back because what will ravens do? I mean, what do you know about ravens? I mean, we all know this, but they're scavengers. So they would eat carcasses. Okay. So it doesn't come back. Then he sent out a dove. So in all these stories, there's birds sent out. Okay. The sea of the waters receded from the surface of the ground. The dove could not find a resting place for its feet because water still covered the surface of the entire earth. And so it returned to Noah in the ark. He stretched out his hand, took the dove and brought it back into the ark. He waited 7 more days. The dove returned and there was a freshly plucked olive leaf in its beak. That's pretty fast. So there's an olive tree and he brings it back. So it's safe to go outside. He knew the waters had receded from the earth. He waited another 7 days. So then it goes through here. He walks out, and God said, "Come out of the ark." So you have a reset of creation and a command here again. Let them increase and be fruitful and multiply on the earth. What he said to the original Adam and Eve. Noah went out along with his sons and his wife and his sons' wives. All the animals come out. Noah built an altar to the Lord. He then took some of every kind of clean animal and clean bird and burnt offerings on the altar. Interestingly enough, is that this follows very closely the way you offer sacrifices to the Lord in Leviticus and Exodus. So Noah is not only a good guy, he's actually a good Jew because even though he's not a Jew yet, because he's showing you how to be a good person. Okay. The Lord smelled the soothing aroma and said to himself, okay, so in the other story, the gods are starving to death. And only when the human being makes a sacrifice are they able to eat. Yahweh doesn't need sacrifices. You can't feed him. The cattle on 1,000 hills belong to him. So sacrifice from the Hebrews is either for forgiveness or thanksgiving. And here it's a celebration of thanksgiving. What's the thinking behind a burnt sacrifice? What's going on there? This is interesting.
No,
The smell was pleasing to God, right?
Right. Let me put it this way. You're going to a friend's house for a barbecue. You're just getting out of your car and you smell and your mouth starts watering. I'll pray for you, brother. Lord, heal him. Okay. So the idea is this. So an offering, in a sense, is a little bit like a barbecue. Some of them were literally barbecues, so that a certain portion was given to Yahweh, the fatty portion, so it would be burnt. So sometimes they were called olah, so it's a total burnt offering. It goes totally to the Lord. Think of it this way. What happens when you burn a piece of meat on the grill? A, your wife gets really angry at you. No, that's not okay. It goes up in smoke, and the smoke is what the gods ate because it's semi-transparent and it's going up. So in their thinking, they're feeding the gods. That's how the gods eat. They eat the smoke of the offerings that you send up.
When Gideon, remember the story of Gideon? And he cooked the meat.
There you go.
and the angel went up and spoke.
Yep. Yeah. So that's actually Yahweh. That's the angel of the Lord. And we haven't gotten to this yet, but you actually have two Yahwehs. You have a Yahweh that seems to be remote, and then you have a Yahweh that's right down in your face. They're all one Yahweh.
Now, they didn't have any sacrifices, burnt offerings in the ark, right?
Not in the ark. No, that'd be a little dangerous. No. So, what I'm getting at is that you have a sacrifice. So in both stories, you have a sacrifice. In the one story, the gods are famished, and they're almost died. They've almost died because if they don't get fed, they will die. Gods could die. You see them fight each other and kill each other. So they're dependent on human beings. God is not dependent on anyone, and the sacrifice pleases him because he knows what it means. You have a human being who's grateful to be alive. So it's an attitude of thanksgiving. And there's again, Noah's being the example of what it is to be a righteous human. You're thankful to God. Yeah.
God and Yahweh, both stories are verbally transmitted down through time. How do you know which is older?
They're equally old. The story, it's a common story to all of them.
God's people were older, but I don't know.
No, I mean, actually, the Jews have a start. They start with Abraham. They're not they have descendants that are much older, but they're relatively newcomers.
God's people. So this story probably will be older.
It's hard to say. As far as we can tell, these stories, they show up in written form because we can't tell. Until something's written down, we don't know what people were doing. We can see artifacts, but they have to write something. These go back to about 2600 BC. That's some of the earliest written ones. When you're talking about the Torah, you're talking about something it comes into being somewhere probably around 1000 BC.
Else died off. You have one righteous man start passing the story down, and there's nobody else passing the story down.
Okay. Yeah, I see where you're coming from on this. I don't know how to answer that right now. That's a good observation. So I want to get us. We got to get into. We got to move along here because we got to get going on this. Okay. So hang on to your seats because things go sour from here. So you have creation stopped, goes back to water and earth, and then gradually the waters recede and you have earth, and you have a little community of humans with a bunch of animals, and basically you have a restarting of creation. Okay. Then God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth." Have you heard that before? Oh yeah. Okay. So it's a repetition. Every living creature on the earth and every bird of the sky will be terrified of you. So that's new. Everything that creeps on the ground and all the fish of the sea are under your authority. You may eat any moving thing that lives. As I give you the green plants, I now give you everything. So the first go around of humans, they're vegetarians. Now they can be carnivores. I'm really glad. But you must not eat meat with its life, that is its blood in it. Why is that? Well, that actually tells you. Yeah, the life's in the blood. So this is sort of the secret to sacrifices. What works in the sacrifice is not so much the animal takes your place, but that the blood of the animal, because it has life in it, it allows Yahweh and his holiness to be in the presence of unholy humans. So the blood plays a very important role. The blood, because it's life, so God sees the life in the blood and not you in the sin. Okay, I mean that, okay, okay. For your lifeblood, I will surely exact punishment from every living creature. I will exact punishment from each person. I will exact punishment for the life of the individual, since the man was his relative. Whoever sheds human blood by other humans must his blood be shed. For in God's image, God has made humankind. So you have you have a new covenant being made, and this is the sort of the first commandment with that. Okay, later on, this shows up. How does this show up about killing? You shall not commit murder. So it showed, but here it's kind of in an earlier form. But as for you, be fruitful and multiply, increase abundantly on the earth and multiply it. Okay, so Noah said to his sons, look, I now confirm my covenant with you and your descendants after you, and with every living creature that is with you, including the birds, so on and so forth. I confirm my covenant with you. Never again will all living things be wiped out by the waters of the flood. Never again will a flood destroy the earth. So this is Yahweh's promise. I'm not going to keep the threat of a flood hanging over your head like the sword, like a threat. It's never going to happen again that way. All right. God said, this is a guarantee of the covenant that I'm making with you and every living creature with you, a covenant for all subsequent generations. I will place my rainbow in the clouds, and it will become a guarantee of the covenant between me and the earth. So a covenant is a solemn agreement between two people, from a more powerful person to a less powerful person, and there are stipulations to it. It is a gift, but it also has conditions to it. And this is the first time a covenant shows up in the Old Testament. It's the Noahic covenant. It's the first one. And God is committing himself to this. The cool thing is that every time a Jew would see the rainbow, they'd go, oy vey. There's, okay. Probably not oy vey. Whenever I bring clouds over the earth and rainbow appears in the clouds, and I will remember my covenant with you and with all living creatures, all kind, so on and so forth. So God said to Noah, this is the guarantee of the covenant that I am confirming you between all living things that are on earth. The sons of Noah came out of the ark were Shem, Ham, and Japheth. These were the three sons of Noah, and from them the whole earth was populated. Noah, a man of the soil, began to plant a vineyard. This is the second garden. This is a garden, okay? It's a vineyard. It has trees in it. They're just small. He drank some of the wine. He got drunk and uncovered himself inside his tent. Ham, the father of Canaan, saw his father's nakedness and told his two brothers who were outside. Shem and Japheth took the garment and placed it on their shoulders. Then they walked in backwards and covered up their father's nakedness. Their faces turned the other way so they did not see their father's nakedness. So what is that all about, their father's nakedness? Kind of different.
Different interpretation.
Yeah. So one interpretation is that that Ham had homosexual sex with his father. Probably not, because the nakedness of Noah is him and his wife together. So he walks in on his parents, which he's not supposed to do. I mean, I get this from Michael Heiser. It's a half-hour long video. It's very good. Look it up. But what you get is, so you have an idyllic scene where you have something like a garden. He plants a tree and eats of its fruit, but it's wine, and he gets drunk. So you have a second fall and then it turns into a sin against him. So the pattern, so God starts it over, and even the righteous Noah goes wrong. Okay. All right. Then Noah woke up from his drunken stupor. He learned what his youngest son had done to him. So he said, cursed be Canaan, the lowest of slaves he will be to his brothers. Trace what follows from here on in relation to Canaan. The question is this. It's a very simple question. Did God command Noah to curse Ham? No. Does the curse stay? Yes. Because Noah has brought something from heaven to earth. He said something. So this, remember the Adam, it says I've got low power. My computer, not me, my computer. So I lost my train of thought here. Again, I'm just trying to point out the repetitions you have here. So you have Adam names the animals. Here you have Noah uttering a curse. So, but it's not something Yahweh told him to do. But it works because when he curses Canaan, they're cursed. And throughout the rest of the Old Testament, you see how that plays out. It's okay. Here's a little sermon on the side. Your words have power. Be very careful about what you bless and curse because you're actually doing something. You have all of, see, here's the thing. In the ancient world, only, can we disconnect this?
Yeah.
Okay, because I'm going to have to have power. We're gonna lose it altogether. You're not going to get the video feed. Is that okay? All right.
Better than.
Okay. I've got my battery. Excuses here, or my computer's going to die. Just plug it into that. That'll work. Yeah. Oh, thank you, Jesus. Okay. Let's go with that. Hospitality room. Yeah. Okay. It comes down to this word agency. I don't mean a bureaucracy. I mean this. In the ancient world, for all the other people groups, the only person who had agency was the king. He could actually do stuff. Everybody else was more or less some kind of a slave or a servant. But that's not the picture you get in Genesis. Adam is just another dude. He has agency. In the biblical understanding, all human beings have agency. When you say something, when you bring heaven to earth, you're doing something, even when you don't know it. And so what we have here, that's so weird. Okay. Okay. Thank you guys for being so patient. This is it's so crazy to me that it does this. I will go weeks in other classrooms without a problem. In here, makes me think that there's, okay, Lord, we trust in you here. Okay. Okay, so he curses, so what you think and do has power. Be careful what you do. You have way more power than you think. And the interesting thing is that over and over again, God takes a nobody, calls them to do something, puts them through an experience, and this nobody becomes a major somebody. That's David, that's Joseph, that's Abraham. It happens over and over and over again. Why is this continuing to time out on me? Okay, but my screen keeps dimming. It's so weird. I have no idea. Okay. All right. All right. I would love to spend more time on this, but I want to get, I'm gonna jump down to Genesis 11. Okay, I want everybody to stand up for a minute. Yeah, do the hokey pokey and turn yourself around. That's what it's all about. It's so weird. I don't know why it's doing that. Okay, so talk to the person next to you. Tell them what's something you've heard tonight that you went, really or wow? Really or wow? What's a really or a wow? Okay, go ahead. This is just strange. I have no idea what's doing it. Okay, it's recharging. But the power went down really fast because it's connected up, because it's putting a signal out.
Yeah.
It's because it's trying to do two things at once. It's trying to make a signal and it's also trying to make another signal. So not only is it using internet, but it's also using
Okay,
processing
all right.
power to replicate itself
Okay.
over there.
Okay, well, I'm connected up and it's charging, so that's just, it's weird to have my screen go dim on me. Okay. So remain standing for a minute. I'm curious, love to hear some of this from you. Something, what did you come up with? You didn't stand up. Okay. What's that? It's a good question. Yeah.
I know some plants can live underwater, but.
Yeah. You know, that's our materialistic view. Maybe he had it in the ark. I mean, you could say that he had plants in the ark with him. The story doesn't tell us.
Yeah, there you go. I was thinking that too.
No, I mean, trees
Okay.
could have survived.
All right. But, okay. Anytime we do that, you're imposing your cultural river on theirs, because that's not where they're going. I get the question, but it wasn't important to them. What was important is that Yahweh made the waters recede and he restarted creation, but humans are still sinful. There's still something going on here. So you have a repetition. So you have a new creation and still humans are not being obedient. It would appear so. Yeah, we don't. What the story doesn't tell us. There's, you get it.
It says all flesh died.
All flesh died.
Okay. Yeah.
Died, but somehow they reappeared in.
But it also, but it says there they were on the earth and later. So what?
I'm thinking the Nephilims are the offspring.
Right. Well, do those disobedient spiritual beings still have access to humans later on? Oh yeah. This is so bizarre. Hello. Come on. Okay.
I thought God castrated.
I think it's the power saving.
Yeah. And then that very.
Yeah.
Ah, okay. There you go. That was it. The battery got so low that it's protecting. I get it. Okay. All right. Okay, back up here. This has to do with methodology. Don't fill in the gaps in a story that you see using modern assumptions. When you do that, you are inserting a whole nother worldview in. You have to stay with what the text says and where it's going. Why? The bottom reason is because this is what God decided to do. He decided what stories were going to go in and how far they would go. He doesn't answer every question. That's not what it's about. It's about learning. Well, how do you tell? Think of God as an ultimate missionary. How do you speak? How do you talk to human beings who think that everything they look at is a God? And you go, no, 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 that's actually not right. Those are things. I'm the only God. Everybody in the culture believes that God, there are all these gods. The idea that God is the only true God, there's no God like our God. I mean, when you understand Hebrew, the Hebrew Bible, you go, I know why they had to say that, because there are lots of gods in that world. But he's saying, no, I'm beyond comparison. I made them all. But that is a revolutionary idea to them. Because God's breaking in and saying, hey, I'm sorry. Not sorry, like this is the way it is. Those are not gods. There are spiritual beings and they're tricking you. I'm the real God. That's what was the important thing. And ultimately, your theology is more important than your scientific methodology. Okay, so anyway, I'm just methodology. Okay, let's go to chapter 11. Okay, the whole earth had a common language and a common vocabulary. When the people moved eastward, they found a plain in Shinar and settled there. Then they said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks and bake them thoroughly." They had brick instead of stone and tar instead of mortar. When they said, "Come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower with its top in the heavens, so that we may make a name for ourselves. Otherwise, we'll be scattered across the face of the entire earth." All right. What is this all about? Usually when people read this, they go, "Oh, this is about the evils of technology. You get human beings making stuff and it goes bad." I'm not saying that isn't true, but that's not what the Hebrews are thinking about here. What is the Tower of Babel?
A portal.
It is control. A portal? Yeah, okay. It's control, it's a portal.
Maybe,
I mean, if they can reach the heavens, then they can bring down, their being.
but the heavens go around them anyways, right?
This is what they're talking about. This is called a ziggurat. I showed you the first day we met a video of the city of Nineveh. It had one of the largest ziggurats around. This is it. They had no mountain. So it goes like this. All ancient people believed basically that mountains are holy places and that's where the gods reside. You get that in Greek mythology with Mount Olympus. All right? But it shows up all over and over again. You actually, but we see this also because the Hebrews talk about Mount Zion. Well, Mount Zion is not very high. It's more like a hill. I mean, if you've been there, you go, that's not much of a mountain. But they're not talking about physical geography. They're talking about spiritual, cosmic geography. Because Jerusalem and the temple is the center of the universe. It's where God comes to reside and to meet with human beings, at least for a while. Now, you get into the New Testament and Jesus says, no, actually, I'm where you meet with God. That's why he says, kill me and this temple will be rebuilt in 3 days, because he's now the temple. He still is. And actually, you are too. You're the living stones. Sorry, another story. But so the tower we're talking about is the Tower of Babel. This is it. And this, so the reference to, let's go back to the, let's go back here about the bricks, because this is the giveaway here. They found a plain in Shinar, and then they said to one another, "Come, let us make bricks and bake them thoroughly." In Israel, they don't use bricks very much because they had stone. If you're in Mesopotamia, you don't have stone, you have to make bricks. So this is actually a kind of counter story, because the Babylonians believe something like this. The gods came and gave us special insight into how to organize a civilization. And they taught us how to make bricks and build ziggurats. And the ziggurat, actually, best way, the ziggurat was a god catcher. Sound weird? Okay. Because I go back to this picture here. The ziggurat is an artificial mountain, and at the very top, you have it's designed. It's sort of like a condominium. It's kind of like a B&B for a god. There's a place to stay. There's food. There's music going on, and the idea is this: you attract the god. I mean, these are beings that control your life. So you attract the god. And then what you do is you entertain it. You give it food, you sing to it, and you create a statue, and you activate the statue, and you've got the god, you've captured it. So now you can start to control the god. So you manipulate it like you would try to manipulate a human. Because the idolatry is basically a way to get, like, I like the control. It's a way of getting control over the cosmic world. So you build a god attractor, and you sort of seduce a god to come in, and then you give them sacrifices, and you get them to do what you want. What's the problem with that model? It's idolatry. Well, it's an idol. It's the exact opposite. So they don't want this. I mean, they want their name. In other words, they want their reputation and what they do, because in the ancient world, it's not just you, it's your family, your clan, your tribe, your nation. You're connected to them. So they want to make themselves famous by getting Yahweh to do what they want. That's what the story's about.
Also like parallel against what Cain did when he went and built a city and then they become so boastful like Cain did.
Yeah,
Like
similar kind of thing. Yeah. But this is getting more to the theology of it. Because in the ancient world, the idea is the gods are your enemies. It's kind of like the mafia. Imagine a divine mafia. So you have to buy them off and get them on your side. You don't love them, but you have to deal with them. So this is a whole system. I mean, and I've used this model over and over again. I hope it doesn't bore you, but the whole ancient world lived with this kind of idea. You have a god, and you have a king, and you have a land or some kind of space. What you do is you have to get that god under your control. You have to sing to it. You have to do all kinds of stuff to get it on your side. And the king is then the king is the agent of the god, carries out the will of the god. And usually the will was, you take all of your men and all your resources, and I want you to go over and attack that kingdom, kill their god, kill their people, take their women and bring them back. So divine warfare is actually the way you increase things, and it's told to you by God. So this whole basically, and the Lord came down to see the city and the tower that the people had started building. And the Lord said, if as one people, let's see, if as one people all sharing a common language, they have begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be beyond them. Come, let us go down and confuse their language so they won't be able to understand each other. So the human attempt to control God ends up in a disruption of human unity. Yeah. And that gets played out. Again, this is a pattern. It gets played out over and over and over again. If you go then to think of the book of Revelation as the mirror to Genesis. So in Genesis, what's coming down out of heaven? The perfect city. It never lands, it's always coming down. It's the heavenly Jerusalem. So you have, and there's no temple in that city because the Lord himself is there. So you have, that story is sort of the reverse of the Tower. That's one place where the reverse of the Tower of Babel. There's another place. Okay, back up again. So Babel is a critique of the Babylonians because their name, that word Babel, it sounds very much like Babylonian, because the Babylonians had the idea, well, look, we've created the civilization based on the wisdom of these Apkallu gods who've helped us, and we beat your Yahweh. That's what they believed. And so this story is going, no, they didn't. When human beings do that, they basically, they sow disunity in their attempts to unify themselves around a false god. They end up disunified, spread out, and literally speaking different languages. Yeah.
Verse 7 says, come, let's.
Yeah.
Let's is a contraction, let us.
Let us. Yeah. So that I would again say that is the divine counsel. That is or what Michael Heiser calls the Deuteronomy 32. And actually, I want to go there for a second because that's the challenge of these stories is that we get a little bit, and then we get a little bit, and we get a little bit. There's a whole story behind that we don't know. I use the example of, because this is still a phenomenon today. When you watch Star Wars, you were not just watching a science fiction movie, you were watching a fighter pilot movie, a guys on the Pioneer, on the Frontier movie, you were watching an aircraft carrier, you're watching all these movies all at once. And so Genesis 1 through 11 is a compressed version of something that's much bigger behind that. And part of that is Deuteronomy 32. So if you want to go there, we could do that. That sounds like a plan. I'm sorry, what? No, they're not trying to eat Yahweh. They're trying to control Yahweh. Yeah.
So verse 7 says that they don't interrupt, they're gonna be able to accomplish that.
if they continue on that trajectory, they will simply become so God the whole idea of creation is order out of unorder. They would disorder themselves and wherever they go so much that it would destroy what God wants. I can't let them go there for their sake and for the sake of creation. So, but the consequence is that the unity, they thought that if they could worship the same God on their own, it would bring them together. And God is saying, no, actually, when you try to do that, you lose your unity. Yeah.
If you didn't interrupt, they, they would lose their unity, but what is it that they were accomplishing? What would they accomplish if they weren't interrupted?
Well, they would become Babylon in a sense, because that's what Babylon did. It's a critique of the whole way the ancient world works. You capture a god, you get it to do what you want, and you become a famous people. Because one of the ways that you live on is in the reputation that people ages down later talk about you. So you get fame, you get a name for yourself. And that's the driving force behind this whole model.
God said they would accomplish something, but what they wanted to accomplish was dropping God. But that was not what they were accomplishing that he said they were going to accomplish. It's like kind of got mixed up in my head.
Well, if as one people all sharing a common language, they've begun to do this, then nothing they plan to do will be beyond them. So they would go rogue, I guess would be one way to put it. They would create something that would be so bad, and so God actually stops it because they cannot agree. They have no communication with one another. No, they wouldn't. They wouldn't, because what they want is a distortion of what's supposed to be. It's ordered around their desire to be in control.
It just sounds like they're going to get what they want.
No, well, they won't. They get sort of the opposite of it. Instead of coming together, they actually are torn apart. Okay. Let's go with Deuteronomy 32. Let's go with verse 8. Okay.
The last thing that they wanted was to obey God's command to populate the whole earth.
Right. They didn't want to do that. Well, they wanted to stay where they were. They wanted to control things. So again, no, that's a very good insight. They're being disobedient. They're an example of how not to be a people. So this is in Deuteronomy chapter 32. When the Most High gave the nations their inheritance, when he divided up humankind, the idea here is that this is part of that backstory of what's going on in the tower, that there's more to it. He set the boundaries of the peoples according to the number of the heavenly assembly. Let's jump forward. When you go to Daniel, what you get there, Daniel has this vision in the night where he sees 3 different beasts arising. And these are symbolic representations of a series of empires that arise. And they're ruled by some kind of spiritual forces. Let me, actually, I've got this in my slide here. Let me go back to that. No. Yes. Oh, come on. Where is it here? Okay. Let's do Daniel first, and it make more sense to you. Then he said to me, "Don't be afraid, Daniel, for from the very first day you applied your mind to understanding and to humble yourself before your God, your words were heard. I have come in response to your words. However, the prince of the kingdom of Persia was opposing me." Who is that? It's a spiritual being in rebellion to God. And it is one of the from the Babylonian view, it would be an Apkallu. because all of the empires of the world are actually run behind them is some kind of dark power that is a spiritual being in rebellion to God. And that's what Deuteronomy 32 is about, is that God basically says, Israel's going to be my portion. All of you other nations, I'm going to let these rebellious angels rule over you. So the picture of where does evil come from in the Bible is more complex, because the story I always heard was, well, the evil and disruption in the world is because of human beings. And it's like, no, it's human beings, and they had some real help of the wrong kind. You actually have another rebellion, and it shows up in Isaiah and Ezekiel. We don't have time to go there tonight, but what you have is you have these spiritual beings that are behind, influencing, and using earthly kingdoms for their will. Yeah.
How does the Trinity play in this historic study?
Yeah, the Trinity comes much later.
Progressive.
The progressive revelation is really part of it. God has to develop. Again, God is a missionary. How do you start talking to human beings? Because you're so holy, how do you even be around them and develop a relationship with them so they understand who you really are, that you're not like those other gods? Well, that's Abraham. And Abraham thinks that Yahweh is his family God because he comes from a country where they worshiped a lot of gods. Oh yeah, there's Yahweh. And Yahweh has to go, no, I'm not like that. I'm totally different. Takes him out. You see all those stars in the sky? Your descendants are going to be greater than that. So what you get in the Old Testament is God teaching a people who he is, what he's like, and who they are supposed to be because of that. They actually had to learn it. Early on, gosh, I wish we had time to go into this more. Very early on, what you get in the Old Testament is basically, it's called the two Yahwehs. So Gideon, Abraham and Gideon, and there's other places that shows up too, or a different form of it is Exodus 4, where Yahweh shows up and speaks to Moses. You have the angel of Yahweh, which is actually Yahweh himself, because he refers to Yahweh, and then he speaks as though he is Yahweh, because he is. So you have a Yahweh that seems to be way up yonder away, and then you have this Yahweh that's right down in your face. The Gospel of John calls it out and says, in the beginning was the Word, because the Word actually, if you look at go down a rabbit trail here. When it talks about, so Jeremiah, when the word came to Jeremiah, the word touches him. It touches his lips. I'm sorry. That's Isaiah. That's an angel. But in Jeremiah, the Lord reached out and touched me. So the word davar is not, we think, like a series of sounds connected, consonants and vowels that has meaning. The word is actually a person in the Old Testament. And then John actually shows you. So you have the idea of Jesus being the Son of God, connected to God, and it's already there in the Old Testament, because you have two Yahwehs. You have this sort of Yahweh far away, and you have this Yahweh right in your face. Gideon has this encounter with a Yahweh who eats a sacrifice and it disappears, which sounds an awful lot like what happens to the disciples on the road to Emmaus, where Jesus is there, he breaks the bread, they recognize him, and then he's gone. So you get how does God explain? Because he has to build a relationship with the people to reveal to them who he is. So we don't get the Trinity until much later on. I would argue that the first time we really see the Trinity would be at Jesus' baptism, because there you have the Father, you have this is my beloved Son. Jesus comes up out of the waters, and the Jordan River is not just a river, it's chaos. He's coming up out of the chaos, and when he does, the Holy Spirit comes down on him and stays. That's the first time you see the Trinity. And it shocked people because they'd never really heard that before. It is a new thing. It is, I would say there's a progression to what God is doing. So I don't know if I can answer your question. what was the Trinity doing there? I don't know, we're not to that point yet. So, okay. Okay, I want to do, I want to end here. Is there anybody else have an easy question? Yeah.
So in today's world, because the powers and principalities are still all over the world, but we are all, becoming God's people. So like, how would that model look like today?
Which model?
The powers and principalities as well as our is coming against them, or like the evil God.
How would it look today? Well, it would look like the church, because we are a heavenly, earthly reality built around the presence of the Son of God that worships the Father, inspired and empowered by the Spirit. And we're kind of threatening, because we're not because of us, but because of Jesus, we're the most powerful spiritual entity on the earth. So it talks about Jesus leading powers and principalities, taking them captive. Or I saw Satan falling like lightning from heaven. When Jesus saw that human beings were actually capable of participating in his presence on earth, it changed everything. So we are a huge threat. And the ultimate, it's throughout the rest of the New Testament. You don't have to be afraid of those powers. They have something going on, but they're in the process of being defeated. They've been defeated. And so in Revelation, you have the future coming into the present. So Revelation shows us what's going to happen at the end, because it's already happened. You can appropriate that and live in it now. So those spiritual forces they've been defeated, but you still have to fight them. I mean, that's the way I'd put it. To what them? Displace them? I don't know.
Replacement theology.
I don't know. I don't know how to answer that question. I don't know. I don't. The church is the starting of the kingdom of God on earth. There's more of it to come, and we're playing some kind of a role right now. Partly it is that we become more like Jesus, and we become C.S. Lewis uses the metaphor of a holy infection. So we infect the world with the living presence of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, and we subvert these kingdoms. Although in one sense they're already broken, their power's been broken. But I guess you would say, we would be like a beautiful vine that grows in the ruins of an ancient building and destroys it in the process. I mean, that's the image I get. So, yes. Yeah.
What is the biggest thing that you want us to take away from this time together?
That you are one of you because you're human, and because you are in Christ, you have power to bring heaven to earth. Yeah. That's what I want you to get. And it's not something that starts with Jesus. It actually starts in the very first verses of the Bible. We live we live in heaven and on earth at the same time right now. The problem is that most of what we've heard, a lot of what we've heard is accept Jesus and get a ticket to heaven and get away. And that's not it. It's not escaping heaven and earth, it's shaping them. That's what we're supposed to do. And a lot of what's happened is a soundbite. I mean, it's not wrong. I mean, in a sense, you'll go to heaven. I mean, but actually, heaven's coming to us. If you take the Bible seriously, the heavenly Jerusalem comes out of heaven down to earth. It's coming. So, or one guy says, it's not about getting you into heaven. It's getting heaven into you. The consciousness of being in the presence of God and being able to do stuff. I wish we had time, because what you see in the Bible and then in church history over and over again is that God takes people that seem very minor, but because they go through something with Yahweh, they become pivot points for all of history. It starts in the Bible and it continues on. Um, and you know, that's really important because that's still going on. Yeah. But if you don't know that and you go, I'm just a nothing, it's like, well, no, you're not. You're a something. You already are. You are a daughter of Eve. You've got that agency, and you have no idea where it's going to go. But if you're faithful, you'll be amazed at what happens. It's like in the story. Did you watch The Lord of the Rings? Do you remember? Okay, so there you have, because that's a very biblical story, because you have these hobbits, and they're little. I mean, they're only this tall, and they're weak, and they like to eat a lot of breakfast. A hobbit becomes the savior of the world because he's willing to sacrifice. And so that war is waging outside. Inside the volcano, he's fighting Gollum, and Gollum bites his finger off to get the ring, and Frodo lets it go. He wins by surrendering and saves the world. And he's a little character. He's a nobody. The story's all about him. I mean, that's an example in literature of that kind of thing. God takes the little person. David. Well, I love this because they're doing this in the House of David series. Is that David is an unwanted son. He's a son of shame, and he becomes the king of Israel. And you watch him. You watch what he does. So he goes through this. He's like a pressure cooker, and he goes through this process, and he will then defeat one of these Anakim. And he actually, well, David invents love of God. He's the first one to be described as loving Yahweh. And so he does it through worship. So he sets up, he brings into being a way of relating to God in terms of intense worship and love. Does he mess up? Oh yeah. But God creates that possibility for all of our human beings in David. And the interesting is that what God does in one place, it can go forward and backward. I mean, that's the other thing about the heavenly realm, is that it's not constricted to our idea of time. Okay, so anyway, yeah, good question. All right, you guys, we're 1 minute over. So stand up, I want to pray with you, and then I'll let you go. Oh, Lord, don't let me say something stupid. I'm so tired. Lord, it's been so amazing to be with these brothers and sisters and explore these ancient and wonderful and powerful scriptures where you lay down the basic patterns that are full of life. My prayer is that they will continue to study your word and go after things that we've just touched the surface on most of these things. There's so much more there. But thank you that you've brought them. Thank you for the incredible privilege of being able to teach. And I pray, Lord, that they would take seriously and begin to live out more and more, that they bring heaven to earth. Like really, they're constantly doing it. And when we're conscious of that, then we say, Lord, I can't do that. I don't want to do this without you. I want to do it with you. I don't want to be like the people of the Tower of Babel. I don't want it to be about me. I don't want to be like Noah. I want to bring something bad into the earth. I want to be like Abraham and Joseph and David and Moses. I want to be a turning point. Thank you. Thank you, Father. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you, Spirit. And everybody said, amen. Okay, you guys. Good night. This is the last one. Yeah.